The Alpha King spurned the kingdom's beauties to marry the quiet girl he loved for years. The grand hall of the Ashford estate shimmered under the glow of 100 candles, their flames dancing across polished marble floors that reflected the opulence of old money and ancient lineage. Marcus Ashford stood at the edge of the crowd, his broad shoulders filling out a tailored black suit that whispered wealth without shouting it. At 32, he commanded attention effortlessly, not just because he was the heir to the most powerful business empire in New England, but because of the quiet intensity in his dark eyes that made people feel simultaneously seen and exposed. Tonight's gala was supposed to be his grand entrance back into Boston society, after 5 years of self-imposed exile in London, building the European branch of Ashford Industries. The city's elite had gathered like moths to a flame, and Marcus knew exactly what they expected: for him to choose a bride from among the carefully curated selection of daughters from the most prominent families. His mother, Catherine Ashford, had orchestrated this evening with the precision of a military campaign, introducing him to one beautiful, accomplished woman after another. If you're enjoying this story, please subscribe and leave a comment telling us where you're watching from. Now let's continue. "Marcus, darling, you simply must meet Victoria Pemberton," his mother cooed, guiding a statuesque blonde toward him. Victoria's smile was practiced perfection. Her designer gown probably cost more than most people's cars, and her family's pharmaceutical empire made her an ideal match on paper. Victoria just returned from Paris, where she was studying at the Sorbonne. "Mr. Ashford, it's such a pleasure," Victoria purred, extending a hand adorned with diamonds that caught the light. "Your mother has told me so much about your work in London. I'd love to hear about your expansion plans." Marcus shook her hand politely, offering a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "The pleasure is mine, Miss Pemberton. London was certainly educational." He could feel his mother's expectant gaze, but his attention had already drifted across the room to where a small figure in a simple navy dress stood near the French doors, partially hidden by a marble column. Emma Richardson had always preferred the shadows. Even now, at 28, she seemed to shrink from the spotlight that others fought so desperately to occupy. She worked as a children's librarian at the Boston Public Library, a position that suited her gentle nature and love of stories. Her auburn hair was pulled back in a modest bun, and she wore minimal makeup, not because she was trying to make a statement, but because it had never occurred to her that she needed to be anything other than herself. Marcus had known Emma since they were children. Their families had been neighbors before tragedy struck when Emma was 12. Her father's construction company went bankrupt after a series of unfortunate events, and they'd moved to a modest apartment in Jamaica Plain. While their social circles diverged dramatically, Marcus had never forgotten the quiet girl who used to sit under the oak tree in her backyard, reading for hours with an expression of pure contentment. He'd loved her since he was 17, and she was 13, though he'd never had the courage to tell her. Back then, the 4-year age gap seemed insurmountable, and by the time she was old enough for it not to matter, he was being groomed to take over the family empire, with all the expectations that entailed. His father had been clear, and Ashford married within their social sphere. It wasn't cruelty. It was simply the way things were done. "Excuse me," Marcus said abruptly to Victoria and his mother, not waiting for their response as he moved through the crowd. He heard his mother's exasperated sigh behind him, but he was already focused on the one person in this room full of hundreds who made his chest tighten with something that felt like coming home. Emma was studying a painting on the wall, a Turner seascape that his grandfather had acquired decades ago. She stood close to it, her head tilted slightly, completely absorbed in the swirling blues and grays that captured a storm at sea. She didn't notice him approach until he spoke. "You always did prefer Turner to the more popular Impressionists," Marcus said softly. Emma startled, turning to face him with wide hazel eyes that reminded him of forest clearings in autumn. Recognition flickered across her face, followed immediately by something that looked like panic. "Marcus, I didn't expect you to... I know this is your party, but I didn't think you'd remember." That you love Turner because his storms feel real? Of course I remember. He smiled, a genuine one this time, and watched the faint blush creep up her neck. I didn't know you'd be here tonight. Your mother invited the library board. I came as Mrs. Henderson's +1 since her husband is traveling. Emma fidgeted with the small clutch in her hands. I should probably let you get back to your guests. You must have 100 people wanting to talk to you. 101, technically, but you're the only one I want to talk to. The words came out more honestly than he'd intended, and he saw her eyes widen in surprise. Before she could respond, his mother's voice cut through the moment like a blade. Marcus, Senator Blackwood and his daughter are asking for you. Catherine Ashford appeared at his elbow, her smile tight as she took in Emma's modest appearance with barely concealed disdain. Oh, Emma Richardson. I didn't realize you were still in Boston. How is your mother? She's well, Mrs. Ashford. Thank you for asking. Emma's voice was quiet but steady, and Marcus felt a surge of admiration for her composure under his mother's scrutiny. Lovely. Now, Marcus, we really must. Mother, I'm in the middle of a conversation. Marcus didn't raise his voice, but the steel in it made Catherine pause. I'll find the senator when I'm ready. His mother's eyes flashed with warning, but she was too well-bred to make a scene. Of course, darling. Don't keep them waiting too long. She glided away, leaving a wake of expensive perfume and unspoken disapproval. Emma looked uncomfortable. You should go. I don't want to cause problems between you and your mother. You're not causing anything. She is. Marcus ran a hand through his dark hair, frustrated by the whole charade of the evening. Emma, can we talk somewhere private? Just for a few minutes? I don't think that's a good idea. Please. He hated the desperation in his voice, but 5 years away had taught him that life was too short to keep hiding behind propriety and expectations. There's something I need to tell you. Something I should have said a long time ago. Emma studied his face, and he could see the internal debate playing out in her expression. Finally, she nodded. The library. Your father's library was always quiet during parties. They made their way through the crowd, Marcus deflecting attempts to engage him in conversation with polite but firm excuses. The library was in the west wing of the estate, a 2-story room lined with mahogany shelves that held thousands of books collected over generations. The moment they stepped inside and Marcus closed the door, the noise of the party faded to a distant murmur. Emma walked to the center of the room, her fingers trailing along the back of a leather chair. This room always felt like a sanctuary. When my father used to do business with yours, before everything fell apart, you let me hide in here and read. Do you remember? I remember everything about you, Emma. Marcus moved closer, his heart hammering against his ribs. That's what I wanted to tell you. I've been in love with you since I was 17 years old, and not a day in the last 15 years has gone by when I didn't think about you. Emma's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes shining with unshed tears. Marcus, we can't. Why not? He closed the distance between them, stopping just short of touching her. Because my mother wants me to marry someone who comes with the right last name and the right connections. Because society expects me to choose a woman who was born into the same privilege I was. Because that's your world, Emma said, her voice breaking. I'm a librarian who lives in a 1-bedroom apartment and takes the T to work every day. Your mother looked at me like I was something she needed to scrape off her shoe. I don't belong in ballrooms and galas, Marcus. I belong in libraries with children who need help finding the right book to make them forget their troubles for a while. Then I'll come to your world. The words surprised him as much as they clearly surprised her. I don't need the galas and the society dinners. I never did. I need you. Emma shook her head, but he could see the yearning in her eyes that mirrored his own. You say that now, but what about tomorrow? What about next month when your mother pressures you to attend another event? What about next year when your business partners expect you to have a wife who can navigate their social circles? Then you'll learn, or I'll stop caring what they expect. Marcus reached out and gently took her hand, feeling the calluses from years of shelving books and the slight tremble in her fingers. Emma, I spent 5 years in London trying to forget you. I dated other women. I threw myself into work. I did everything I could to convince myself that what I felt for you was just some childhood infatuation. But it never worked. Every time I came back to Boston, I'd drive past the library hoping to catch a glimpse of you. I'd ask mutual acquaintances how you were doing, trying to make it sound casual. I've been in love with you for half my life, and I'm tired of pretending I'm not. A tear slipped down Emma's cheek. I loved you too. I still do. But love isn't always enough, Marcus. Your family will never accept me. They'll make your life difficult. And eventually, you'll resent me for it. Let me worry about my family. He used his thumb to wipe away her tear, cradling her face in his hand. I'm 32 years old, Emma. I run a billion-dollar company. I make decisions every day that affect thousands of employees. Don't you think I'm capable of deciding who I want to spend my life with? It's not about capability. It's about reality. But even as she spoke, she leaned into his touch, and Marcus felt hope bloom in his chest. Then let's create a new reality, one where we decide what matters, not them. He leaned his forehead against hers, breathing in the subtle scent of her shampoo, something floral and uncomplicated, so different from the heavy perfumes of the women at the party. Give me a chance to prove that I'm serious. Have dinner with me tomorrow, and the day after, and every day after that until you believe me. Your mother will have a heart attack. My mother will survive. Marcus smiled. She's tougher than she looks, and who knows, maybe once she gets to know you, really know you, she'll see what I see. Emma pulled back slightly to look at him, her hazel eyes searching his face for any sign of doubt. Whatever she found there must have satisfied her because she nodded slowly. Okay, dinner tomorrow. But Marcus, I need you to be honest with yourself. If this becomes too difficult, if the pressure from your family and your world becomes too much, you have to tell me. Don't drag it out because you think you owe me something. I'm not worried about it becoming too difficult. He pressed a soft kiss to her forehead. I'm worried about wasting any more time. They stood there for a long moment, wrapped in the quiet of the library, while the party continued without them. Marcus knew that walking out of this room and back into that crowd would be the beginning of a battle. His mother would be furious. The society matrons would gossip. Business associates would question his judgment. But as he looked at Emma, with her gentle smile and honest eyes, he realized he'd been fighting the wrong battle all along. The door burst open, and Catherine Ashford stood in the doorway, her face flushed with anger and champagne. Marcus, what on earth do you think you're doing? Senator Blackwood's daughter has been waiting for 20 minutes, and you're hiding in here with... She stopped, taking in their proximity, the way Marcus's hand still cupped Emma's face. Oh, no. No, Marcus, this is not happening. Mother, I'd like to talk to you about this in private. Marcus didn't move away from Emma, a deliberate choice that his mother noticed immediately. Private? You've been private with this girl for quite long enough. Catherine's voice rose, her composure cracking. Do you have any idea what people will say? What they're already saying? You disappeared from your own party to hide in the library with the help's daughter. Mother, that's enough. Marcus's voice thundered through the library, startling both women. Emma's father was Dad's business partner and friend. The fact that he fell on hard times doesn't change that, and it certainly doesn't give you the right to speak about her or her family that way. Catherine's mouth opened and closed, clearly unused to being challenged by her son. Your father would be ashamed. Dad would want me to be happy, and he'd tell you that class and character aren't the same thing. Marcus took Emma's hand, intertwining their fingers in a gesture that was both protective and possessive. I'm going to ask Emma to marry me. Not tonight, because I want to do it properly, but soon. You can accept it and be part of our lives, or you can make this difficult and lose your son. The choice is yours. The silence that followed was deafening. Emma squeezed his hand and he could feel her trembling. His mother looked between them, her face pale, working through calculations only she could see. Finally she spoke, her voice strained. You're serious about this. More serious than I've ever been about anything. Marcus held his mother's gaze steadily. I love her, Mother. I've loved her for 15 years. That's not going to change. Catherine closed her eyes briefly, and when she opened them again, something in her expression had shifted. Not acceptance, exactly, but perhaps the first crack in her resistance. Your father and I married for love, you know. Our families thought we were mismatched. His family had money, but mine had the pedigree they wanted. It was quite the scandal. Marcus blinked in surprise. His mother rarely spoke about her courtship with his father. I didn't know that. We don't talk about it because we proved everyone wrong. We built something strong together, stronger than either of us could have built alone. She looked at Emma for the first time without obvious disdain. Emma, do you love my son? Emma's voice was steady when she answered. Yes, Mrs. Ashford, I do. And are you prepared for what that means? The scrutiny, the expectations, the absolute certainty that there will be people who never accept you no matter what you do? I don't know if anyone can be truly prepared for that, Emma said honestly. But I'm willing to try if Marcus is willing to be patient with me while I learn. Catherine studied her for a long moment, then sighed. Marcus, you've certainly inherited your father's stubbornness. Very well. If you're determined to do this, then we'll do it properly. No more hiding in libraries while your guests wonder where you've gone. Come back to the party, both of you, and I'll introduce Emma as your partner. We'll start as we mean to go on. Marcus felt a wave of relief so strong it nearly made him dizzy. Thank you, Mother. Don't thank me yet. I still think this is impulsive and potentially disastrous, but I learned a long time ago that trying to control you is like trying to control the tide. She straightened her dress, her composure sliding back into place like armor. Emma, that dress is lovely but entirely wrong for the impression we need to make. Come see me tomorrow and we'll go shopping. If you're going to be an Ashford, you'll need to look the part even while you're being yourself. After Catherine left to return to the party, Emma turned to Marcus with wide eyes. Did that really just happen? Did your mother just agree to take me shopping? I think that was her version of a peace offering. Marcus pulled Emma close, savoring the way she fit against him. Are you ready for this? Because once we walk back into that party together, there's no taking it back. Emma looked up at him, and in her eyes he saw fear mixed with determination. I've been ready for 15 years. I just never thought you were. Then let's stop waiting. He kissed her softly, a promise sealed between them in the quiet sanctuary of the library. Let's show them all that sometimes the best choice is the one your heart made years ago. They walked back to the party hand in hand, and Marcus felt the ripple of shock and whispered conversation spread through the room like waves. His mother caught his eye from across the hall and gave him a slight nod before turning to speak with a cluster of curious society matrons, no doubt beginning the work of managing the narrative. Victoria Pemberton looked appropriately surprised, but not particularly heartbroken, already turning her attention to a hedge fund manager's son. Senator Blackwood approached with his daughter, and Marcus braced himself for awkwardness, but the senator simply smiled knowingly. I had a feeling you had your eye on someone else, Ashford. My daughter's heart will survive. Congratulations. As the evening wore on, Marcus introduced Emma to person after person, watching her handle each interaction with grace despite her obvious nervousness. She didn't try to be someone she wasn't. didn't pretend to know about things she didn't understand, and her genuine interest in people, her librarian's gift for drawing others out, won over more guests than her pedigree ever could have. Near midnight, they found themselves on the terrace overlooking the estate's gardens. The fall air was crisp, and Marcus draped his jacket over Emma's shoulders. "This is insane," Emma said softly, looking out at the lights of Boston in the distance. 12 hours ago, I was planning to spend tonight eating takeout and reading. Now I'm at your family's estate, having been approved by your mother, and apparently going shopping tomorrow." "Too insane? We can still run away. I hear Portland's nice this time of year." Marcus was only half joking. Emma laughed, the sound warming him from the inside out. "No running. If we're doing this, we're doing it right. Together. No matter how terrifying it is." "Together," Marcus agreed, wrapping his arms around her from behind and resting his chin on top of her head. "You know, I spent 5 years in London building an empire, making deals worth millions, managing hundreds of employees. But standing here with you is the first time I've felt like I've actually accomplished something that matters." "You're such a romantic," Emma teased, but he could hear the emotion in her voice. "Only with you." He turned her to face him, taking both her hands in his. "Emma Richardson, I meant what I said earlier. I'm going to ask you to marry me, and when I do, I want you to know it has nothing to do with rebellion or proving a point to my mother or anyone else. It's because you're the person I want to come home to every night. You're the person whose opinion matters more than anyone else's. You're the person who makes me want to be better than I am." Tears streamed down Emma's cheeks now, but she was smiling. "You're going to make me ruin my makeup, and I have to face all those people again when we go back inside. Then let's stay out here a little longer." Marcus kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. "Let's stay here and pretend the rest of the world doesn't exist." They stood together on the terrace as the party continued inside, wrapped in each other, and the certainty that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. And for Marcus, who had spent so long trying to meet everyone else's expectations, the simple act of choosing his own path felt like the most powerful decision he'd ever made. Inside, through the French doors, he could see his mother watching them with an expression that might have been approval, or might have been resignation. With Catherine Ashford, it was hard to tell. But she raised her champagne glass in their direction, a small gesture that Marcus knew cost her pride, but spoke volumes about her acceptance. The next few weeks were a whirlwind that Emma navigated with Marcus at her side. True to her word, Catherine took Emma shopping, an experience that was awkward at first, but gradually warmed as they discovered a shared love of historical biographies and classical music. Catherine was a difficult woman, demanding and particular, but Emma's genuine interest in learning and her refusal to pretend to be someone she wasn't eventually earned a grudging respect. The true test came when Marcus announced to the Ashford Industries board that he was promoting Emma to a newly created position, Director of Community Engagement. The role was real. Marcus had been wanting to develop stronger ties with local communities and saw Emma's experience with public libraries and her natural empathy as perfect qualifications. But the board members, most of whom had been expecting him to marry someone with business connections they could leverage, were skeptical. "With all due respect, Marcus," Thomas Hendricks, the company's CFO, said during the meeting, "while I'm sure Miss Richardson is competent, this appears to be a case of mixing personal and professional interests. What experience does she have with corporate community engagement?" Marcus had prepared for this. "She has 7 years of experience engaging with diverse communities through the public library system, where she developed programs that increased youth literacy rates by 18% in underserved neighborhoods. She's skilled at building partnerships with local organizations, understanding community needs, and creating sustainable programs. Exactly what this role requires." "But the optics," another board member began. "The optics are that Ashford Industries is finally walking the talk about community investment instead of just writing checks and calling it philanthropy." Marcus's voice was firm. Emma will report directly to me, yes, but her performance will be measured by the same metrics we use for every director-level position. Results, not connections. Emma, sitting in the corner of the boardroom where Marcus had insisted she be present for the discussion, spoke up for the first time. I understand your concerns. I didn't grow up in this world, and I don't have an MBA or family connections to Fortune 500 companies. But I know how to talk to people, how to listen to what communities actually need, instead of what we think they need. Give me 6 months. If the programs I develop don't show measurable impact, I'll step down. No drama, no hard feelings. The room was silent for a moment. Then Sarah Chen, one of the few female board members and someone Marcus respected for her directness, smiled. I like her. She's got spine. 6 months sounds fair. The vote passed, not unanimously, but with enough support for Emma to begin her work. That evening, as they celebrated with takeout Chinese food in Marcus's penthouse, Emma had insisted they stay at her apartment sometimes too, maintaining some connection to her old life. She collapsed on his couch with an exhausted laugh. Your boardroom is terrifying. Do you know that? I've faced hostile library patrons and angry parents, but nothing prepared me for a room full of people in $1,000 suits judging my qualifications. Marcus sat beside her, pulling her legs across his lap. You were perfect. Confident but humble, willing to prove yourself, but not apologizing for who you are. I was terrified I'd say something stupid and embarrass you. You could never embarrass me. He rubbed her feet, making her moan in appreciation. Do you know what I realized today? Watching you in that boardroom, holding your own with people who have been doing this for decades? What? That I was right to wait for you. Not intentionally wait, but right to trust my instincts all those years ago that you were special. You're going to change that company, Emma. You're going to change everything. Emma sat up and kissed him deeply. We're going to change things. Together. Speaking of which, when were you planning to make good on that proposal you keep talking about? Marcus grinned. I was thinking next month. There's this bookshop in Salem, the one you mentioned once that you loved as a kid. I've been working with the owner to close it for an evening. Thought we could go there, surrounded by books, and I could ask you properly. Emma's eyes filled with tears. You remembered that? I mentioned that place years ago, in passing. I told you. I remember everything about you. He pulled a small velvet box from his pocket, making her gasp. But if you'd rather not wait. Marcus Ashford, are you proposing to me in sweatpants over Chinese takeout? I'm proposing to you in the moment when I can't wait another second to make this official. He opened the box, revealing a ring that made Emma's breath catch. It wasn't ostentatious. A single diamond set in a vintage gold band with delicate filigree. This was my grandmother's ring. She left it to me specifically because she said when I found the right woman, I'd know. And the moment I saw you again after 5 years, I knew. Emma's hands shook as he slipped the ring on her finger. Yes, God, yes. Of course, yes. They spent the rest of the night planning their future, not the wedding. Emma insisted they keep that simple and intimate, much to Catherine's dismay, but their life together. Where they'd live, how they'd navigate their vastly different worlds, what kind of family they wanted to build. I want kids, Marcus said suddenly around midnight. 3 or 4, and I want them to grow up normal, not like I did with nannies in boarding school. Define normal, Emma teased, but her eyes were soft. Because my normal was pretty humble compared to yours. Your normal. Library visits, public schools, learning that things matter because of what they mean, not what they cost. He pulled her close. That's the normal I want. The next months were a careful dance of blending their worlds. Emma threw herself into her work at Ashford Industries, developing partnerships with local schools and community centers that went far beyond check writing. She created mentorship programs connecting employees with at-risk youth, organized company volunteer days that actually made a difference, and slowly won over even the most skeptical board members with her results. Catherine remained a complex presence in their lives. She could be warm one moment and cutting the next, but Emma learned to navigate her future mother-in-law's moods with patience. The breakthrough came unexpectedly when Catherine found Emma crying in the estate's library one evening before a formal dinner. "What's wrong?" Catherine asked, her voice softer than Emma had ever heard it. "I'm sorry, I'll pull myself together. It's stupid." Emma wiped her eyes. "If it's making you cry, it's not stupid." Catherine sat beside her, and Emma noticed the older woman was genuinely concerned. "I overheard some women at Marcus's office event last week. They were talking about me, saying I was a gold digger who trapped him, that I'd never fit in, that he'd eventually realize his mistake. And I know I shouldn't care what they think. But sometimes it just..." Emma's voice broke. Catherine was quiet for a moment, then said, "When I married Marcus's father, my mother-in-law told me I'd never be good enough for her son. She said I lacked substance, that I was just a pretty face from a good family with nothing real to offer. It took me years to prove her wrong, and even longer to forgive her for making me doubt myself." Emma looked at her in surprise. "I didn't know that. I don't talk about it because I don't like admitting how much it hurt. But I learned something important. You can't control what people say about you. You can only control who you are and whether you let their opinions change you." Catherine took Emma's hand, a gesture that felt monumental given their history. "You've made my son happier than I've ever seen him. You've brought something to Ashford Industries that all our MBAs and consultants couldn't. Genuine connection to the communities we claim to serve. That's not nothing, Emma. That's everything." From that night forward, Catherine became less of an adversary and more of an ally, though never exactly warm. She defended Emma to gossiping society matrons, included her in family traditions, and gradually, carefully, built a relationship based on mutual respect, if not deep affection. The wedding took place 6 months after Marcus's proposal, in a small ceremony at the bookshop in Salem that Marcus had secretly purchased and planned to donate to the city as a public library branch. Emma's wedding gift. Only immediate family and close friends attended, with Emma's mother crying throughout the entire ceremony, and Marcus's business partners looking bemused at the unconventional venue. Emma wore a simple ivory dress she'd found at a vintage shop, with wildflowers in her hair. Marcus wore a classic suit, but insisted on adding a tie with tiny books printed on it, making Emma laugh through happy tears. When the officiant asked if anyone objected, Marcus's mother audibly sighed, but said nothing, and several people chuckled. "I promise to love you in ballrooms and in libraries," Marcus said during his vows, his voice thick with emotion. "In boardrooms and in our living room, when you're brilliant and when you're doubtful, when you're strong and when you need strength. I promise to be your partner in every adventure, your comfort in every storm, and your home wherever we are." Emma's vows were simpler, but no less powerful. "I promise to be brave enough to stand beside you, humble enough to keep learning, and strong enough to love you through whatever comes. You chose me when the world expected you to choose someone else, and I choose you right back. Every day, for the rest of our lives." Their first year of marriage was not without challenges. Marcus's social calendar required Emma to attend events where she sometimes felt out of place, though she grew more comfortable with each one. There were still whispers, still people who viewed her as an outsider, still moments when the gap between their backgrounds felt insurmountable, but there were also unexpected joys. Emma's community programs became the jewel of Ashford Industries' portfolio, featured in business magazines and copied by other corporations. She spoke at conferences about authentic community engagement, her honest, unpolished speaking style refreshing in a world of corporate jargon. And slowly, grudgingly, Boston society began to accept her, not because she changed to fit them, but because she showed them that fitting in wasn't the only form of belonging. Marcus, for his part, found himself transformed by Emma's influence. He started spending less time at society functions and more time volunteering at the programs Emma had created. He learned to listen differently in board meetings, to ask not just about profit margins, but about community impact. He became known for being accessible, for caring about more than just the bottom line, and the company's reputation and performance improved because of it. Their first real crisis came when Marcus was offered a position that would require relocating to New York. The opportunity was enormous. CEO of a major investment firm with triple his current salary and influence that could reshape industries. The board at Ashford Industries assured him they'd support his decision, and Catherine, surprisingly, encouraged him to consider it seriously. "This is what you've been working toward your whole life," she said during a family dinner where the topic dominated conversation. "CEO before 40, the kind of power and prestige that could position you for anything, political office, international business, whatever you want." But that night, lying in bed in their home in Beacon Hill, a restored brownstone that blended Emma's love of history with Marcus's need for modern convenience, Marcus felt Emma's tension. "Talk to me," he said softly. "You should take it," Emma said, but her voice was small. "It's an incredible opportunity." "That's not what I asked. I asked you to talk to me." Emma was quiet for a long moment. "I've spent the last year building something here. Real relationships with community partners, programs that are just starting to show long-term impact. If we move to New York, I start over. And New York society makes Boston look welcoming. So we don't go. Marcus, you can't turn down an opportunity like this because of me. You'll resent me eventually." He rolled over to face her, cradling her face in his hands. "Listen to me carefully. I could have that job, that prestige, that power, and without you, it would all be empty. I learned that in the 5 years I spent in London, trying to build an empire to fill the space where you should have been. It didn't work then, and it won't work now. But, no buts. We're partners, remember? That means we make decisions together, weighing both our dreams and needs. And my dream isn't to be CEO of some firm in New York. My dream is to build a life with you, here, where we've put down roots, where your work matters, and my work matters, and we matter together." Tears slipped down Emma's cheeks. "You're sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything." He kissed her softly. "Tomorrow I'm going to call them and decline. And then we're going to focus on what we're building here, both the business and the family we talked about starting." 6 weeks later, Emma told him she was pregnant. They'd been trying since the wedding, and the joy on Marcus's face when she showed him the test made Emma cry all over again. They decided to wait until the second trimester to tell their families, savoring the secret between them. When they finally announced it at Sunday dinner at the Ashford estate, Catherine's reaction surprised them both. She burst into tears, actual, streaming tears, and hugged Emma tightly. "A grandchild," she whispered. "I never thought." Marcus was so focused on business for so long, and then when you two married, I worried the stress might... She pulled back, embarrassed by her display of emotion. "This is wonderful news, truly wonderful." Emma's mother was equally thrilled, immediately launching into stories about Emma as a baby, and offering advice that ranged from helpful to hilarious. The two grandmothers-to-be, so different in background and temperament, bonded over their excitement in a way that felt like healing something broken in both families. The pregnancy was harder than Emma expected. She had severe morning sickness that lasted well into her second trimester, and the fatigue made her work schedule challenging. Marcus became fiercely protective, rearranging his schedule to be home more, handling late-night cravings with patience, and defending her when board members questioned whether she could continue her community work. "My wife is growing a human being while still running programs that have increased our community engagement scores by 40%, Marcus said sharply during one meeting when someone suggested Emma take a leave of absence. "She's not made of glass, and she doesn't need you questioning her commitment." Emma, listening to the meeting remotely, felt a surge of love so strong it was almost painful. This man who had been raised to value strength and control above all else had learned to value vulnerability and partnership instead. She was changing him just as much as he was changing her. Their daughter, Catherine Emma Ashford, named for both grandmothers in a gesture that made both women cry, was born on a snowy February morning. Marcus was present for the entire labor, never leaving Emma's side despite her warning that childbirth wasn't pretty. When he held their daughter for the first time, Emma saw tears streaming down his face. "She's perfect," he whispered, looking at Emma with such love and gratitude that she started crying too. "You're perfect. Our family is perfect. We're exhausted and terrified and have no idea what we're doing," Emma corrected, but she was smiling. "Perfectly imperfect, then." Marcus kissed her forehead, then their daughters. "Just like us." The first few months of parenthood were a beautiful, exhausting blur. Catherine Ashford, the elder one, became a surprisingly hands-on grandmother, stopping by regularly to help and sharing stories about raising Marcus that made Emma see her mother-in-law in a new light. Emma's mother moved into their guest room for 2 months, providing the kind of practical, warm support that Catherine Ashford was less equipped to give. The two grandmothers developed an unlikely friendship, bonding over their granddaughter and their mutual concern for their children's well-being. Marcus took paternity leave, shocking his board, but setting a precedent that other executives at Ashford Industries began to follow. He learned to change diapers, master the art of swaddling, and functioned remarkably well on minimal sleep. Emma watched him walk the floors at 3 a.m., singing off-key lullabies to their fussy daughter, and fell in love with him all over again. When Emma returned to work part-time, they hired a nanny, but insisted on maintaining a hands-on approach to parenting. Marcus started leaving the office at 5 o'clock, another shock to the company culture, and made it clear that unless there was a genuine emergency, his evenings belonged to his family. Some board members grumbled, but the younger employees applauded the change, and productivity studies showed that the new work-life balance policies Marcus implemented actually improved performance. Baby Catherine, who they called Katie, thrived. She had Marcus's dark eyes and Emma's auburn hair, and from early on, she showed a curious, observant nature that reminded Emma of herself as a child. Marcus would spend hours reading to her, classic literature and children's books alike, his deep voice making even the silliest stories sound important. On Katie's first birthday, they held a party at the bookshop-turned-library where they'd gotten married. The guest list was an eclectic mix: society matrons and single mothers from Emma's community programs, board members and librarians, old money and no money all celebrating together. Emma stood with Marcus, watching their daughter smash her face into her birthday cake while their assembled guests laughed and took pictures. "Can you believe we're here?" Emma asked softly. 2 years ago, I was hiding by that column at your party, convinced we could never make this work." "I can believe it," Marcus said, wrapping his arm around her waist. "Because I never doubted it. Not for a second. Liar, you were terrified." "Okay, I was terrified," he admitted with a laugh, "but I was also certain. Terror and certainty aren't mutually exclusive." He kissed her temple. "You know what the best part is?" "What?" "This is just the beginning. We have decades ahead of us, decades of Katie and whatever siblings she has, of your programs and my work, of building something together that's bigger than either of us could have built alone." Emma leaned into him, watching their daughter laugh as Marcus's mother and Emma's mother both rushed to help clean frosting off her face. The two grandmothers were actually coordinating, working together with the easy teamwork of people who had found common ground in their love for this child. "I love you," Emma said suddenly, fiercely. "I love you for choosing me when it would have been easier to choose someone else. I love you for fighting for us, even when I was too scared to believe we could work. I love you for being an amazing father and partner, and for becoming the person I always knew you could be." Marcus turned her to face him. oblivious to the party continuing around them. "And I love you for being brave enough to take a chance on us, for refusing to be anything other than yourself, even when it would have been easier to try to fit the mold, for making me want to be better than I was, for giving me Katie and this life and more happiness than I knew was possible." They kissed, gentle and sweet, a promise renewed rather than made for the first time. Around them, their improbable family celebrated. Old money and new, society's expectations and reality's rewards, all blending together into something uniquely theirs. Later that night, after Katie was asleep and their guests had gone home, Marcus and Emma sat in their living room, exhausted but content. Emma had her feet in Marcus's lap, and he was absently rubbing them while they both stared at the baby monitor, still amazed that this tiny person was theirs. "Your mother asked me today if we were thinking about having another baby," Emma said, breaking the comfortable silence. "Already? Katie's barely 1. I think she's afraid we'll stop at 1 and she won't get as much grandparent time as she wants." Emma smiled. "She's gotten very attached." "She has." Marcus was quiet for a moment, then asked, "Do you want another baby?" "Eventually, not right away. I want to enjoy Katie being little, and I want to expand the community programs to 2 more cities. But yes, eventually." "Do you?" "I want whatever makes you happy. If that's 1 child or 5, I'm on board." He pulled her feet closer, pressing a kiss to her ankle. "Though I'll admit, watching you with Katie makes me want a dozen more. You're an incredible mother." "Liar. You just like me, sleep-deprived and vulnerable." "That too," he agreed with a laugh. Then, more seriously, "Emma, can I tell you something? Always. When I turned down that CEO position in New York, my father's old business partner called me. He said I was making the biggest mistake of my career, that I was letting a woman hold me back from my potential. He suggested, in not so many words, that loving you had made me weak." Emma stiffened, but Marcus continued. "And I realized he was right about one thing. You have changed me. But not in the way he meant. You didn't make me weak. You made me strong enough to define success on my own terms. You taught me that power isn't about controlling the biggest empire or having the most influence. It's about building something meaningful with someone you love, about making choices that align with your values even when they're not the obvious or easy choices." He looked at her with such intensity that Emma felt her breath catch. "That's not weakness. That's the strongest thing I've ever done, and I'd do it again in a heartbeat." Emma moved to sit in his lap, wrapping her arms around his neck. "You know what I think?" "What?" "I think we were both stronger than we knew. You were strong enough to turn your back on expectations, and I was strong enough to step into a world that tried to tell me I didn't belong. And together we're stronger still." "Together," Marcus echoed, the word that had become their mantra, their promise, their truth. They sat there in the dim light of their living room, in the home they'd built together, listening to their daughter breathe softly through the monitor. Outside, Boston's lights twinkled in the darkness, the same city where they'd grown up in different worlds, but inside, they'd created something new. A space where love mattered more than lineage, where character trumped connections, where 2 people from vastly different backgrounds could build a life that honored both their pasts while creating a future all their own. It hadn't been easy. It had required sacrifice and courage, compromise and conviction. Marcus had given up opportunities that many would have killed for, and Emma had learned to navigate a world that often felt foreign and hostile. But in choosing each other, in fighting for their partnership even when it seemed impossible, they'd discovered something rare and precious. A love that transformed rather than diminished, that strengthened rather than weakened, that proved that sometimes the most radical act is simply choosing to follow your heart. The years that followed brought new challenges and triumphs. Emma's community programs expanded nationally, becoming a model for corporate social responsibility. that emphasized authentic engagement over performative charity. Marcus took over as CEO of Ashford Industries when his mother finally retired, and under his leadership, the company transformed from a traditional corporation into a progressive force that balanced profit with purpose. They had 3 more children, twin boys named after Emma's father and Marcus's, and another daughter they called Grace. Each birth brought Catherine and Emma's mother closer together, the 2 grandmothers forming a bond that transcended their vastly different backgrounds. Catherine even started volunteering at one of Emma's library programs, reading to children with the same imperious tone she'd once used to intimidate society matrons, somehow making it work. Katie grew into a curious, confident child who seemed equally comfortable in ballrooms and playgrounds. She had her father's determination and her mother's empathy, and watching her navigate the world with such ease, Emma sometimes marveled at how different her daughter's childhood was from her own. "Do you think we did it right?" Emma asked Marcus one night, when Katie was 7 and about to start at the prestigious private school Marcus had attended. They were standing in what had become their tradition, on the terrace of the Ashford estate, looking out at the city, just as they had the night Marcus had first confessed his love. Did what right? Blending our worlds, raising her between privilege and purpose, teaching her about both her legacies without letting either one define her completely. Marcus considered the question seriously. "I think we're doing it, not did it, because it's ongoing, right? Every day we're making choices about what values to emphasize, what lessons to teach, what kind of people we want our children to become." Very philosophical for a Tuesday night, Emma teased, but she appreciated his thoughtfulness. "I learned from the best." He pulled her close. "But seriously, look at Katie. She volunteers at the library and plays violin. She's kind to everyone regardless of their background. But she's also confident enough to speak up when she sees injustice. She's not defined by my family's wealth or your family's struggles. She's just Katie, fully herself. That's success in my book." Emma rested her head on his shoulder. "Sometimes I still can't believe this is my life, that I married the boy I loved from afar, that we built this family, that your mother actually likes me now." "Loves you," Marcus corrected. "She told me last week that you're the best thing that ever happened to me, and that she was wrong to ever doubt it." Catherine Ashford admitted she was wrong? "Are you sure she's feeling okay?" "She's getting older, maybe mellower," Marcus chuckled. "Or maybe becoming a grandmother taught her what I learned from you, that love is more important than status, and family is what you build together, not just what you inherit." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the city lights and listening to the distant sounds of their children playing inside. At 47 and 43 respectively, they'd built something neither could have built alone, a family that bridged worlds, a legacy that mattered beyond wealth, a love story that had defied expectations and emerged stronger for it. "Marcus," Emma said softly. Thank you for being patient with me all those years ago, for fighting for us when I was too scared, for showing me that choosing love over fear is always the right choice." Marcus turned her to face him, his dark eyes still holding the same intensity they'd had that night in the library when everything changed. "And thank you for being brave enough to let me love you, for teaching me that strength comes in many forms, for being exactly who you are, always." He kissed her then, deep and tender, a kiss that held 15 years of marriage, 4 children, countless challenges overcome, and a love that had only grown stronger with time. Behind them, through the French doors, they could hear their children's laughter. Katie helping the twins with homework, while baby Grace banged cheerfully on a toy piano. This was their empire, Emma thought. Not buildings or bank accounts or business deals, but these people they'd created together, this love they'd fought for, this life they'd built by choosing each other every single day. It was messy and chaotic and imperfect, and absolutely beautiful. and as Marcus took her hand to lead her back inside to their waiting family, Emma knew with absolute certainty that choosing him, this man who had spurned kingdoms of beauties to marry the quiet girl he'd loved for years, was the best decision she'd ever made. Because in the end, that's what love is. A choice made not just once, but continuously. A decision to fight for partnership over perfection, for authenticity over approval, for building something meaningful together over achieving success alone. It's choosing to see and be seen, to grow and allow growth, to love not despite differences, but through them. Marcus had chosen Emma when the world expected him to choose someone else. And Emma had chosen Marcus when it would have been safer to choose solitude. Together, they'd chosen courage over comfort, love over expectation, and in doing so, they'd built something far more valuable than any kingdom. They'd built a home.